My name is Jim King. I am the Vice President of Eljen Corporation. We're going to take a little time today to talk to you about the Eljen GSF system. This system is available to you here in New York. We've been in New York for quite some time, since the 90s. Actually, it might even be the 80s at this point. I don't know if that goes back in time, but we've been here for a while. The technology itself is actually listed under 75A. But I want to talk a little bit quickly about the company, who Eljen Corporation is. Eljen was founded in 1970 by Joe Glasser. Joe Glasser is a World War II veteran. He's still around with us today. He was shot down twice over Germany in B-27 bombers. He was a navigator. He has really incredible stories. So if you ever see him at one of these conferences, Joe's life has been so full. It's unbelievable. But after Joe came around, Joe decided in the 70s he wanted to start a company that was a little bit different. So Joe started hiring veterans like myself. Bob Kilcup in the back as well. Bob was in Afghanistan. Myself, I was in Iraq. I was in the service for 10 years. My boss, everybody on my team has served in the military, whether it's the Army, Navy, Marines, or Air Force. We're all located in East Hartford, Connecticut. We now manufacture multiple products for the industry, and we're tracking about 90,000 systems here in the U.S. The company itself attracted me, so when I retired from the U.S. Army in 2006, I was very excited to find a company like Eljen, where we do have such a nice military commitment, and we do actually have a pretty cool product. So today we're going to talk about the Eljen GSF. If you guys have not seen the Eljen GSF, it's a geotextile fabric wrapped around cuspated core. It's about 4 feet long, 3 feet wide, 7 inches tall. Each unit has about 86 square feet of that geotextile fabric inside of it. And it takes about 13 gallons per foot. And if you ever notice that white stripe on top, that is the top of the product. And I'll tell you right now, we're going to see a couple of pictures of the product here in the next couple slides, but marketing got to that slide before I ever got to it, and marketing made that a nice big white stripe. The guy at our factory who actually paints that white stripe, his name is Wei. He's blind in one eye, and I only allow him to paint the white stripes at night wearing sunglasses, so they're not always done that well. This you might see on one of your engineered plans. This is how the system is installed here in New York. You'll notice that there's 6 inches of sand underneath the product, as well as 6 inches of sand to the left and right of the product. Notice it denotes that any units that are over 18 inches of cover over the top require a vent. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how the venting works and how the system works. Notice it goes into a 48-inch wide trench. The product itself is all about biomat management. What we're trying to do with the product is manage the biomat. If you look over here at the picture on the right, this is actually one of my favorite pictures in our library. And the reason it's my favorite picture here is it just shows how much sidewall works inside of a septic system. You notice that black tar-like substance, that's obviously failed that trench system. That's an old pipe and gravel. Actually, that pipe that you see there is a clay pipe. And the really cool thing about this picture is on the bottom of that trench, you don't see any penetration of the biomat. You see that it kind of a little bit on the right side penetrated. But if you look at the sidewall on the right and the left side, you see a lot of gray staining. You see that the effluent was passing through those areas. Air was backfilling, working at that biomat, beating it back, and trying to make that trench live as much as it could. That's what we're fighting against here with the GSF product. We're really looking at the stone and pipe system, which is going to grow your biomat horizontally across the bottom. As your biomat grows horizontally across the bottom, it's tougher to get aerobic bacteria to that. As you add more effluent to the system, you grow a larger anaerobic zone at the bottom. Once that goes anaerobic, you're not going to get your treatment. You're going to lose your acceptance rates in the soil. It's going to clog. It's going to go into failure. This is what we're doing with the Eljen GSF system. We're bringing that biomat from the sand-soil interface, and we're going to grow that biomat right on the unit itself. By growing the biomat on the unit itself, we're going to put it into an area where we can manage it. Unlike the stone and pipe system, we are going to keep that soil clean at the interface. We're going to promote the long-term acceptance rates of that soil and not clog it with a biomat. This picture here was taken after a year-long study at the Massachusetts Test Center. You can see those lines that are growing on the bottom of the unit, where the unit is touching the sand. Well, you'll notice between those lines is open air channels. What we're seeing in that system is the actual promotion of the growth of the biomat on the unit itself, not in the sand. This is really important. And what we're using to do that is the geotextile fabric that surrounds our cuspated core. The geotextile fabric, that's your condos, that's the houses, that's where we want the biological material to grow. In each one of our units, which I was talking to you earlier about, we have 86 square feet of that. And I'll show you a little bit about that here in a second. But that is the initial filtration surface that we want the effluent from the septic tank going to. Now, our product was actually partnered up with Dr. Lack, who worked out of the University of Connecticut. And he was looking at a couple different ideas for how to maneuver geotextile fabrics when he was developing or helping develop the Eljen GSF product. And what you see those figures at the bottom are some of the drawings from his notebook. If you notice that the three images on the left there, they're all pretty much modified trenches in some way. The middle one, in fact, does look like a trench. The V will act like a trench with no horizontal bottom area. And the U shape is just a larger, elongated trench. All of these are going to have the same effect of the stone and pipe system I showed you earlier. They're going to grow that biomat at the bottom of that trench, and they're going to fill up with anaerobic areas, and you're not going to be able to treat that biomat growth. The next one was a circular type product that he was looking into. He did not go with that either. And then you can see the drawing all the way on the right. It looks more like an accordion. What he's done here is he's added in multiple areas of vertical aeration pockets, as well as pockets for the effluent after they come out of the system. And what we've ended up is with a product that looks like this. And you can see there the effluent, somebody flushes the toilet, takes a shower, the pump kicks on. The effluent is going to fill up the geotextile fabric in those upward facing cores. As the effluent passes through the geotextile fabric, we're going to capture suspended solids. We're going to promote the growth of the biomat right there on the geotextile fabric. After the effluent passes through into that cuspated core, it's then going to be introduced to the sand in and around the GSF units. Now, as I was saying before, we have 86 square feet of that geotextile fabric inside of each B43. What that translates to in a 4-bedroom home here in New York, in a 21 to 30 minute per inch soil, we're going to be using 520 gallons per day. It turns out we need 37 of those B43 units. The actual install area of that system is 888 square feet. The amount of fabric that we're actually putting in the system is 3,182 square feet. So really, what do those two numbers mean? We almost have 4 times the area to grow the biomat in the units itself in that trench than the actual trench area. So if we're using the units themselves to grow that biomat and not using the bottom of the trench, we've actually magnified that trench by about 4 times. Now, if you took all of those 37 B43 units and you broke the straps and you undid all the fabric and you tied the fabric end to end, you would actually be able to go to the Empire State Building, which is about 1,250 feet tall, go to somewhere around the 89th floor and hold that fabric out the window, and it would touch the bottom of the street. That's pretty cool. That's what we're putting into into that system right there. Personally, this is how I like to think of the product and how it works. If you go down to any of the pier pilings here in Lake George, probably not in Lake George, but let's go out to Long Island Sound where we have a bigger tide. As a tide comes up, nutrients from the ocean put themselves onto that pier piling. As the tide goes out, those nutrients that just came from the ocean, which aerobic bacteria and aerobic bugs couldn't get to before, are now exposed. They come down, they eat them, and you get some withering away. If you ever look at these pier pilings, they're never breaking, where the air is just in contact with the wind, or where they're dug into the sand. Where you see these things break more often than not is where the tide is going up and down on them. That is from the erosion of the water, but that is also from the animals, plankton, bugs, animals coming to eat them. or it's from me backing my boat into it, but one of the two. Now, what you'll see above this, actually, and the one other reason I really like this picture is you see that there's some large seagulls on top of the pier pilings as well. They're not there just by chance, and it's a great place to hang out. As the nutrients and large crabs find themselves on the side of those pier pilings and the tide has gone away, they're a nice snack for those seagulls. They'll drop down and they'll come eat it. If you ever look at an Eljen GSF system that's been inside, that's been in use for quite a while, and you have a observation port to the top of the fabric, you'll see smaller macroorganisms that are worm-like, that are coming in there and they're eating the effluent. They have grown there because there's good food source and the environment's nice. So you'll see that on top of the units as well. The units themselves are on top and surrounded by an ASTM C33 sand. That sand is actually really important for the system. If you use the wrong type of sand around the system, you can get a couple different options there. But if you use something that's too gravelly, you're not going to promote the growth of the biomat on the units themselves. You're going to promote the growth of the biomat actually at the gravel soil interface. If you use a sand that's way too tight, it'll never let the effluent out of the units, and you'll essentially have a bathtub. So we're really looking for the ASTM C33 sand to promote the secondary treatment after the units. What we've seen in our studies using that ASTM C33 sand is not only a good, healthy biomat growth on the unit themselves, but we see unsaturated flow from the bottom of the units to the soil region. Unsaturated flow is extremely important. That means we have a good oxygen envelope not only underneath the units, but to the sides of the units as well. That oxygen is able to actually work on any biomat that's growing underneath the units in the sand unit interface. Anyone have any questions at this point? So the benefits, what have we been using the Eljen GSF for? Typically, in my experience, anytime we have a new approval, now we have quite a mature approval here in the state of New York, but what my experience has been in newer states where Eljen GSF has not been, if you haven't seen what we've been doing recently, Eljen has been a small New England company up until about 2008. Since then, we've expanded from Australia to Sweden. We're now in 30 plus states here in the US, 7 provinces in Canada. And in that time, what we've seen is when you approach a new government or new state, they don't go, well, here's the best sites in the state. Why don't you start working there? What they like to do is go, this is the absolute worst site we've ever seen. We've already destroyed the soils. We've driven over them 17 times. They're made of clay. Oh, and the home is a 3-bedroom, but we have 6 families living in there. That's where we like to start in each brand new state. And so after that, we do pretty well in those sites for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden, then they start allowing us to go everywhere else. So sites that we've really been seeing our stuff used on are sites that require pre-treatment, sites with high water tables because of our mound reductions, poor soils, shallow bedrock, and anything that's rapidly permeable. And I'll actually tell you a really quick story on that one. So this is about 8 years now. In Colorado, we were asked to replace a system. We didn't know anything about the system. The engineer out there, he saw the system, replaced it with an Eljen, and we didn't hear anything about it. The homeowner called us a few months after the installation and goes, hey, my water tastes so much better after we've installed your system, which kind of raised a couple of alarms. So they went out there, they did a dye test, and they found out that the previous system was right over a fissure that went into their water table that was going into the house. And that wasn't good. But we were glad that we were able to help them out there in that situation. And the new field was not on the fissure, so that was good. And, you know, the benefits of the system, it's passive treatment. That is what our system has done. We do have our NSF 40. We have been doing treatment. We are seeing BOD TSS rates. I know in the state of New York, we're not really looking into that. We're known as a dispersal system, but it is good to note that the quality of effluent leaving the product is meets NSF standard 40. It has internal surface area. I already showed you the 86 square feet, which is larger than the trench itself. Basically, we're seeing that package plant strength in a system that's passive. The system itself is very easy to maintain. It's the same type of maintenance that you're going to do with any conventional system. And it has multiple applications, from mounds to beds to trenches, whether or not you're using it on a residential home to your lakefront property or a commercial site as well. And then one of the really interesting things about the product itself is that even though we were talking about growing the biomat on the unit itself, on day one of testing of the system, you're going to see the same level of treatment as day 360. So if you do have a lakefront property, if you do have a seasonal home, it's good to know that there's no startup period that you need to go through. You don't need to have to throw bugs in the tank a month before. If you decide that you didn't want to go to your seasonal home until June, that's fine. Show up in June. If you wanted to show up in May, just show up, flush the toilet, and the system goes back into operation. This has been very good as well for summer camps and things of that nature. They don't like the maintenance. They don't want to do the startup period. This helps them out in that passive treatment. The hard to get to spots. I know Bob just hand dug one in here in New York a couple of weeks ago. Is that right, Bob? How many units did you guys hand dig into the 15 units? Hand dug in for a 3-bedroom. I personally, every time when I used to see that slide of people hand digging, do we have any contractors in here? How many would actually believe that you guys would go out there and hand dig a system? I personally, I'm not bidding on that. I'm not hand digging in anything. The contacts at Eljen, you have myself, Jim King. You have Bob Kilcup. He's our Northeast technical rep. Our distributors are also very, very well versed. If you are doing a commercial system or anything of that nature, please feel free to contact us. We'll be happy to help you out on how to take a passive treatment system and scale it up for your commercial system. The nice thing is you're probably going, wow, that guy was such a great presenter. I hope I could hear him talk again. Fantastic. I'm so glad you guys are excited. Tomorrow, right across the hall at the Johnny Rockets, we're actually going to be doing training. For engineers at 9 a.m., you can get 2 CEUs. We'll be doing that training tomorrow morning. We will serve breakfast. And if you're a contractor, we invite you to come by at 1 o'clock tomorrow. We'll be happy to feed you as well, lunch. If you really like the lunch from today, please come back tomorrow for 1 o'clock. We have the same exact thing. And other than that, if you do ever have a question on site, we always do have a representative nearby. Please give us a call. We're just always there to help out. So thank you very much for giving me the time to come up here and present.